Hello, I'm John David Ebert, and welcome to our lecture course on understanding contemporary art. Right now we're in the middle of a discussion of the works of Anselm Kiefer. Last time we looked at the early works of Kiefer. Now we're going to look at the works of his middle period and recent stuff that he's done. This painting here is known as the Milky Way. It was painted by Kiefer somewhere between 1985 and 1987. And what it shows is the Earth with a sort of gash in it. And Kiefer's comment on this painting is that the gash in the Earth reflects the cloudiness of the sky, which makes it resemble as though it were reflecting the actual Milky Way. There's a lead funnel and there are lead strings that suggest emanations coming down from the heavens, and the funnel is receiving the emanations from the heavens. But what this means is that for Kiefer, any place in the microcosm where there's an abyss or a rift or a rupture of some kind can suddenly open up a portal into the macrocosm. And so cosmic energies can be found anywhere. And that's the point of this painting. This is Melancholy from 1989. In the late 80s, he started turning his attentions toward found objects and made objects and sculpted objects. This is a plane that's been constructed out of lead. And so it's a kind of oxymoron in the sense that a lead plane can certainly not fly. So its rupture, its function to fly has been ruptured, but as Kiefer says, it can still carry ideas. It becomes a vessel for thought. And one of the ideas that it carries here is that he has put a symbol, what's known as Dürer's solid, from Dürer's etching called Melancholia, which is done in the 16th century. And Dürer created his own sort of solid. And the solid that he creates, that Kiefer duplicates here, is a symbol, perhaps, there's some debate about this, for the philosopher's stone, the lapis. The lapis is that which the alchemist was questing for, that would transform base metals such as lead into gold. And so the fact that we have a lead plane here with the philosopher's stone, and the philosopher's stone having the capacity to transmute lead into gold, suggests the possibility of a kind of reverse analogy. Instead of beating plowshares into swords, we have the reverse. We have an implement of destruction and war that is reterritorialized as an art object, and the capacity there to for it to become a work of art is revealed through the power of the philosopher's stone. This work is another three-dimensional work. This is Mesopotamia, the High Priestess, from the late 80s, 1989 perhaps. And it is a series of texts made out of lead, once again his favorite material, lead. And the two bookcases are each labeled. One is labeled Euphrates, the other is labeled Tigris, and there's a pane of glass in between them, separating them. The way books were stored on shelves in ancient Mesopotamia was very similar to this. The first books were written on clay tablets, so they were actually inscribing. The earth itself was the surface of inscription for the first texts. These texts somewhat resemble those books, but they resemble the way that they were laid out. They were stored on shelves, lined up in the libraries in places like Ebla, and they looked something like this. And so Kiefer is going back here, and he's doing a kind of archaeology on the signifiers of the pre-metaphysical age as well as the metaphysical age. His entire oeuvre consists in an archaeology of digging up the signifiers that constructed both of those ages, the pre-metaphysical age or the mythological age of the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians on the one hand, and the metaphysical age from Plato to Heidegger, or Plato to Nietzsche, on the other. This is another work that also rummages back through the pre-metaphysical age. This is Your Age and Mine and the Age of the World from 1997. Here he turns to Egypt instead of Mesopotamia, to the Great Pyramid of Cheops, also known as Khufu. Cheops is the Greek name. Khufu is the original Egyptian name. Khufu was the son of a man named Snefru, who in the 4th dynasty was the greatest of all the pyramid builders. He built more pyramids than any other pharaoh before him, or indeed even after him. And so and he was a genial ruler, but his son Khufu was a rather nasty tyrant, and he wanted to compete with his father, so he created the greatest pyramid of all. Instead of his father had the most, so he creates the largest. And so we have the Great Pyramid. And by the time we discovered it in the West, of course, the limestone casing had been stripped off and the pyramidion at the top was gone. And so what we have really is just a shell, a carapace left behind by life which has vanished. A temporal metabolism has already cycled through this civilization, and all we have left are its shells, which are exactly analogous to seashells or fossils. And Kiefer paints it as such. It looks very much like a sort of dead flower that one might find crushed between the pages of some family album of reminiscences. It's a carapace, a dead shell, like that of a cicada left behind on a tree after the insect has gone. And this is Falling Stars from 1995. This now begins to, here Kiefer is painting himself for the first time in a long time in his art, and he's showing himself on the ground as receptive to cosmic influences. So he's open now to the heavens, and the heavens now switches out with the earth for occupying 3/4 of the canvas, because he's shifting his orientations in the paintings of the 90s to a cosmic orientation, and he does a whole series of star paintings at this time. And he's taking in the cosmic, heavenly influences now, not so much the earthly influences. This is one of the works that results from that. This is The Secret Life of Plants from 2001. It's titled after a book by that was written by Peter Tompkins on the secret life of plants. But what it is a series, it's a book, and Kiefer has a history of making books. That's one of the things that he does is make these little sort of homemade looking books with collages and scraps and photographs in them. This book, you couldn't guess it by looking at it, but it's a 6-foot tall book, so it's as tall as a person, and each page is a sheet of lead with the star maps that do not have the traditional Greek names on them, but the NASA star names. And so this is the scientific construction of the cosmos, and it evokes the myth of the great book of nature that we spoke about last time, where Galileo saw all the secrets written in the great book of nature. Here he has NASA still writing and seeing the cosmos in terms of the great book of nature, but with scientific formulae and equations, which creates a kind of indifferent cosmos, one in which it is very easy to get lost because the landmarks are simply numbers rather than mythological names. So it isn't a cosmos in which the soul finds itself very much at home, but rather a wanderer and is lost. Here's another one of his star paintings from this period. This is Andromeda of 2001. And this shows the influences of the constellations imprinting on the watery abyss. The primordial watery abyss from out of which creation will come is receiving, instead of Kiefer himself now, is receiving the cosmic influences. They will imprint the basic Platonic archetypes. This is the exact opposite to the scientific construction of the universe. This is the old mythological age, pre-metaphysical construction of the universe, in which one is receptive to the powers of the constellations, which imprint one with their powers in a Platonic and astrological sense. The reference to the secret life of plants in the previous work was a reference to the fact that Robert Flood and others such as Rudolf Steiner had said that the plants are receptive to cosmic influences of the planets and the stars. The spiral growth of a plant imitates the spiraling of the heavens as it whirls around the pole star, according to Rudolf Steiner. And so there is a micro-macrocosmic correspondence between plants and planets, and Kiefer is playing around with this. Here's another one of the ancient cosmologies. This is the spirit brooding over the abyss again, only this time it's a desert, and we have once again Dürer's solid, the polyhedron from Dürer's painting Melancholia, and there's some lead underneath it that is molten lead that has been poured on the canvas. Lead is the metal that is associated with Saturn, the slowest moving of the planets. Lead is the heaviest of the metals, and it corresponds to the melancholic temperament of the 4 great classical temperaments. The melancholic was thought to be a kind of fluid that if one had an excess of, one would have a depressive disposition. But here he's got the philosopher's stone as a symbol of the order and organization of the human mind, which imprints upon the primordial chaos the possibility for art, basically, to extract a cosmos out of the chaos in imitation of the act of the demiurge, the great creator. And the lead sprinkles that have been poured onto the canvas here again suggest the potential of the philosopher's stone of alchemy to transmute the lead into the base metal lead into the gold, into the higher metals of gold. And the project of the artist is precisely to do that, to pull form out of chaos. And long about 2004, he began to return to, he did an exhibition of works where he returned to the themes of World War II. This was a series of 30 paintings that he did that were dedicated to the Russian futurist Velimir Klebnikov, who was a Russian futurist who died at the age of 36 in 1922, and he was one of the founders of futurism. And he had a theory, a cyclical theory, that naval battles recur every 312 years, or multiples thereof. And so what Kiefer has done here is to create submarine battles and to put U-boats, three-dimensional boats that he's attached to the canvas, something that he's done all along, attaching things to canvases, to create a sort of memorial to this cyclical idea that war is something, if it is indeed cyclical, it's something that cannot be fixed or gotten rid of. It's endemic. There's a cosmic dimension to war. It's part of the cycles of the planets, and it may as well be simply ingrained in the cosmos. Here's an armada that from the same exhibition. He's glued a series of these boats to this canvas. And then to finish off here with this, we have a recent work, 2011, The Ark, in which he has represented a U-boat on a canvas with an angle above it that is suggestive of the Great Pyramid that we saw earlier. And down below, he's got basically the signifiers of the Jacob's Ladder that he had rendered in a number of his paintings that connects the earth to the heavens. The dream of Jacob that he had, that's seeing a ladder with angels going up and going down, was the reciprocity of cosmic energies from the earthly realm to the heavenly realm. All those signifiers now have been melted down in the post-metaphysical age, and so he has them burning here in a bonfire at the bottom. The U-boat represents the technologization of ancient powers, like the shaman's power to go underground or to burrow down or to go into the water, has been replaced by the U-boat, just as the airplane has replaced the shaman's ability to fly through the air. So all the ancient powers have been technologized, and all that is left of them are the traces and ghosts. Instead of a pyramid here, we have its trace. We have a dead signifier. We have merely the geometrical angle that would require filling in. But notice that the sky and the earth, the sky and the water rather, are basically the same color here. There are no horizons in the post-metaphysical age anymore because technology has essentially rendered the old distinction between the heavens as a realm of separate eternal powers, a realm of gods, angels, and archetypes, and the earth as a realm of temporal metabolism, a realm with its own laws totally separate from those of the heavens, is now obsolete in the post-metaphysical age, in the technological age, in which there is no above and no below, because the laws we now know are precisely the same in the heavens as they are on the earth. And so technology has transformed everything. There are no horizons. There is no, properly speaking, no real up and no real down. And so all those old metaphysical age compasses have to be tossed out now in the quest for new signifiers. And that's essentially what Kiefer is doing, is reterritorializing old signifiers and combining them into hybrids in quest of new signifiers. And so next we'll finish off the discussion with Kiefer by looking at his work at La Rebote.